They remember the song. They remember the beat, but they forgot the man. Long before the headline spoke of a sudden death, there was a voice that once echoed across every radio, every school hallway, every city block. A voice that did not glorify violence, but warned about it. A voice that spoke of survival, pressure, and choices long before those words became fashionable. Coolio was never the loudest rapper from the West Coast. He did not sell an image of untouchable power. Instead, he sold something far more uncomfortable: reflection. His music carried humor, intelligence, and social truth, wrapped in melodies the world could sing along to. At the height of his success, he stood at the center of global culture. Grammys, #1 records, a song that crossed borders, languages, and generations. And yet, years later, he would be found alone on a bathroom floor, his story reduced to speculation and silence. Just weeks before his death, Coolio spoke openly about secrets in the music industry, about money, about power, about things he said he was no longer afraid to expose. So the question lingers, not shouted, but whispered. What happens when a voice that once warned the world decides to speak again? He was born into instability, but raised on discipline. Coolio entered the world on the 1st of August 1963 in Los Angeles, California. His early childhood was shaped by absence. After his parents divorced, his father was sent to prison, leaving his mother to raise the family alone. Not long after, they moved to Compton, a place where survival often mattered more than potential. From a young age, Coolio suffered from severe asthma. Hospital visits were frequent. Breathing was never something he took for granted. While other kids played outside, he spent long hours indoors. His mother, determined to keep him focused and out of trouble, sent him to the library. Books became his escape. Words became his protection. He read constantly, so much that he skipped a grade. Teachers recognized his intelligence early. He later recalled being one of the smartest students in his elementary school, but intelligence did not shield him. Being younger, smaller, and academically advanced made him a target. Bullying followed him daily, especially after jumping from 5th grade straight into 7th. Music arrived quietly but changed everything. Around the age of 12, he was introduced to hip-hop through neighbors from New York. They brought tapes, records, and a different energy. House parties filled with beats and rhymes opened a door he didn't know existed. He began writing, then rapping. At first, it was play. Then it became identity. His original rap name was Boo Daddy, taken from a childhood nickname his family used. But one joke changed that. While messing around with friends, someone compared him to Spanish singer Julio Iglesias. The name stuck. Eventually, it shortened to Coolio. As his home life deteriorated, the streets pulled harder. After his mother lost her job and began drinking heavily, structure disappeared. The bullying intensified. For protection, he joined a gang. What began as self-defense quickly turned into survival crimes, armed robberies for food and money. At one point, he took the blame for a crime committed by a friend and spent 10 months in juvenile detention. Then came the moments that changed him forever. He witnessed his first murder in a school bathroom. Later, he saw a second, a brutal beating carried out with a hammer. He became physically ill watching it. That was when he walked away from gang life. But escape did not mean safety. Crack cocaine flooded the community. His mother became addicted. Soon after, so did he. What started as marijuana mixed with cocaine turned into full addiction. He later said the first time he smoked crack alone, he was hooked instantly. The turning point came unexpectedly. One argument, one crack pipe, one realization that his life had narrowed to nothing. To survive, he left. Sent by his mother, he moved to Northern California to live with his father, newly released from prison. There, away from easy access to drugs, He enrolled in community college. He became a volunteer firefighter through a program designed to help recovering addicts. He worked airport security. He rebuilt himself quietly. And in that quiet, music returned not as fantasy, but as purpose. Success did not arrive suddenly. It arrived after humiliation. Before the world knew his name, Coolio stood in welfare lines. Fans recognized him there, cashing government checks while trying to feed 3 children. The industry had seen his face, but it had not opened its doors. Even when those around him were rising, he was left behind. When WC and the mod circle connected with Ice Cube's camp, Coolio asked for nothing more than a chance to go on tour, even as a bag carrier. The answer was no. There was no room. That rejection stayed with him. It sharpened him. Everything changed when he met manager Paul Stewart. Stewart had a reputation for spotting raw talent and had already helped artists like Warren G. and Montel Jordan secure major deals. When he heard Coolio's demo, he believed in it immediately. The demo was shopped across the industry. Offers came in: Jive, Polygram, Tommy Boy Records. Coolio chose Tommy Boy for one simple reason: they offered money when he needed it most. What started as a single deal quickly became something bigger. In the studio, Coolio worked relentlessly, song after song. No shortcuts, no waiting for inspiration. The label noticed. The single deal became a full album contract. On the 8th of March, 1994, he released Fantastic Voyage. The response was immediate. The song climbed to number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 2 on the Hot Rap Songs chart. It went platinum, selling over 1 million copies. MTV played the video in heavy rotation. The sound was familiar yet fresh, sampling the legendary R&B group Lakeside. But Coolio's energy made it feel new, fun, carefree, accessible. The industry took notice. His debut album, It Takes a Thief, followed soon after, reaching number 8 on the Billboard 200 and earning platinum certification. Songs like I Remember and Sticky Fingers expanded his reach, landing placements on major film soundtracks. He was no longer fighting for entry. He was inside. Then came 1995. Gangsta's Paradise was not just a hit, it was a cultural moment, built on a sample from Stevie Wonder's Pastime Paradise. The song carried weight, depth, reflection. After initial resistance, Stevie Wonder allowed the sample on one condition: the removal of profanity. Coolio agreed. The result was historic. Released on the 5th of August, 1995, the song went number 1 in the United States, the United Kingdom, and across Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. 6 million copies sold. The Dangerous Minds soundtrack went triple platinum. At the Grammy Awards, Coolio won Best Rap Solo Performance, defeating Biggie, Tupac, Dr. Dre, and others. The video, featuring Michelle Pfeiffer face to face with Coolio, became iconic. It wasn't flashy, it was confrontational, honest. At that moment, Coolio was everywhere: on radios, on television, on movie soundtracks, on the world stage. He had reached the peak. And peaks, as history often shows, are where the fall quietly begins. When the spotlight moved on, it did not dim slowly. It shut off. After the unprecedented success of Gangsta's Paradise, expectations became a weight rather than a gift. For a moment, Coolio was everywhere, touring nonstop, recording, appearing on soundtracks, television, and films. But momentum in the music industry is fragile. What comes fast can disappear even faster. In 1997, Coolio released his 3rd studio album, My Soul. Commercially, it was not a disaster. The album went gold. The single See You When You Get There reached number 12 on the Billboard Hot 100 and received consistent airplay. By most standards, it was a solid release. To his label, it was a failure. Tommy Boy Records expected another global phenomenon. When that didn't happen, they walked away. Coolio later spoke openly about what he believed happened behind the scenes. He claimed the label had a pattern sabotaging artists' third albums to avoid paying higher royalties built into their contracts. He pointed to other artists on the roster who experienced the same sudden withdrawal of support. Whether coincidence or design, the result was the same. He was dropped. Without a major label backing him, the structure that once carried his career vanished. Financial pressure returned. Legal trouble followed. While touring in Europe, Coolio was charged in connection with an incident at a boutique where merchandise was taken without payment. He denied assault, explaining that the situation was a misunderstanding involving autographs in exchange for clothing. The court did not see it that way. He was sentenced to probation and fined $30,000. That same year, he was arrested in Los Angeles for carrying a concealed weapon and possession of marijuana after being stopped for driving on the wrong side of the street. Public perception began to shift. The image of a thoughtful, socially conscious artist was slowly replaced by headlines that told a simpler, harsher story. Arrests, courtrooms, mugshots. The industry, once eager to celebrate him, now watched from a distance. Coolio tried to regain control. He launched his own label, Crowbar Records. He continued releasing music independently, including albums distributed overseas and projects aimed at loyal fans rather than charts. But the mainstream attention was gone. Instead, a new version of visibility emerged: reality television, guest appearances, nostalgia-driven performances, shows that framed him less as a cultural voice and more as a personality. A man once known for warning the world about the dangers of the streets was now introduced as entertainment. There were more arrests in later years, a possession charge at an airport, domestic allegations that were ultimately dropped. Each incident chipped away at the legacy the music had built. And yet, he never stopped working. He kept recording, kept touring, kept speaking. But the distance between who he had been and how he was now seen grew wider every year. By the time the world remembered his voice again, it would be under circumstances no one expected. In America, fame is often mistaken for protection. Coolio learned the difference. To many listeners around the world, Coolio was frozen in time, forever associated with a single song that defined the mid-1990 seconds. But inside the United States, his story carried a deeper meaning. He represented a generation of black artists who entered the industry with talent and left it with scars. By the late 2010 seconds, Coolio had begun speaking more openly. Interviews became less nostalgic and more reflective. He talked about money that never reached artists, about streaming platforms that generated billions while creators struggled, about contracts designed to confuse, exhaust, and silence. He was not vague. Coolio said powerful people in the entertainment industry had approached him with offers that made him uncomfortable. He spoke about being asked to compromise values, to look the other way, to stay quiet. And for the first time in years, he made it clear he was done staying silent. In one interview just weeks before his death, he said something that unsettled listeners. He acknowledged the risk of speaking out. He said he had children. He admitted fear not for himself, but for what might happen if he went too far. And then he added a sentence that would later circulate widely online. If something happens to me, he said, then everything I was talking about was true. Outside the U.S., fans viewed these comments with caution. Some dismissed them as frustration from a veteran artist navigating a changed industry. Others saw them as a familiar pattern. Voices that challenge powerful systems often fade quietly. Within America, particularly among black artists and independent creators, his words landed differently. They echoed long-standing conversations about ownership, exploitation, and the cost of resistance. Coolio was no longer speaking as a superstar. He was speaking as a survivor. He began calling for unity, encouraging artists to come together, to question streaming models, to demand transparency. It was not a loud movement, it was a warning. And then, without resolution, the voice stopped. The industry moved on quickly. Social media mourned. Headlines summarized. But the questions he raised remained unanswered. In a country built on freedom of speech, Coolio's final message was not a demand, it was a reminder. Truth, once spoken, does not disappear just because the speaker does. On the 28th of September, 2022, the voice went quiet. Coolio was visiting a friend in Los Angeles when he went into the bathroom and did not return. When the door was finally opened, he was found lying on the floor. Paramedics arrived, but it was already too late. He was pronounced dead at the scene. There were no drugs found, no paraphernalia. Authorities suggested cardiac arrest. Those close to him pointed to a lifetime of severe asthma, a condition that had sent him to hospitals repeatedly as a child and followed him onto stages as an adult. He often carried inhalers. Sometimes he needed them mid-performance. The official explanation was brief, clean, final. But timing has a way of complicating silence. Just weeks earlier, Coolio had been speaking openly about power, about money, about artists being exploited by systems too large to challenge alone. He talked about streaming platforms and missing royalties, about being approached by people who wanted him quiet. He never named names. He never made accusations without context. He simply spoke. Some believe that is all it takes to become inconvenient. Others see only coincidence, a body worn down by years of stress, illness, and survival. The truth may never be fully known, and this story does not ask the viewer to choose a side. It asks something simpler, to remember who he was beyond the theories. Coolio was a reader, a thinker, a survivor, a man who escaped addiction, raised children, and gave the world music that still carries weight decades later. He sold over 27 million records. He appeared in dozens of films and television shows. He won awards that once placed him at the center of global culture. But numbers are not his legacy. His legacy lives in the honesty of his words, in the fact that his most famous song was not about glorifying power, but questioning it, in the way he warned young listeners about choices before the consequences arrived. He leaves behind 10 children, 5 grandchildren, and a catalog that continues to speak even now. Some stories end without closure, but dignity does not need applause. If this story made you pause, if it reminded you of someone whose voice mattered, share your thoughts below. We read every comment. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told with care, consider subscribing. Because silence is easy. Remembering takes effort.